Over the past few years, everything has changed. Where and how we work and live, the way we collaborate and measure success, and the emerging technologies we use to get it all done. Welcome to The Bridge. Join our host, Scott Kinka, in a series of discussions with top leaders in technology and learn about how they bridge their lives and their businesses into our new hybrid work and AI-driven reality. Our hope is that the insights and experiences will help you on your journey in business and in life from who we were to who we are today. And maybe it'll help you get better prepared for whatever comes next. The Bridge is a service of Bridgepoint Technologies, the nation's leading IT advisory firm. Bridgepoint helps business leaders evaluate, procure, implement, and manage technology and customer experience solutions with a focus on realizing sustainable results for your business growth. And now, here's your host, Scott Kinka.
We've thought about networks in much the same way for the last 40 years. And then everything changed overnight. Right? People aren't in offices, applications are not in data centers. The very concept of the traditional network is in many ways becoming moot. We went from connecting one-to-one to one-to-many to many-to-many. These eras are what my guest, Renuka Nadkarni, Chief Product Officer of Aryaka, call the infrastructure era, the applications era, and the conversion era. Renuka joined Aryaka, best known as a next-gen network and SD-WAN provider, following the pandemic to help move the company's product and focus into the latest of these three eras, conversion. Or as we talked about on the pod, maybe we can call it convergence. The era when network and security edge are one and the same. Her goal is to turn Aryaka from a networking company to a security company and ultimately to an observability company. An explanation you'll have to listen to the podcast to dig into. This was a great conversation about how we connect securely in the future with a Silicon Valley veteran of Cisco, VMware, Infoblox, F5. She's worked directly with business author Jeffrey Moore, which tells you all you need to know about how much fun I had recording this episode. If you're having fun listening to The Bridge, please subscribe, comment, like, and rate us on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or your favorite platform. But let's get right into it. I'm really excited about this episode. Here's Renuka Nadkarni, Chief Product Officer of Aryaka. Hi, and welcome to another episode of The Bridge. I'm really excited about this particular episode. My guest is Renuka Nadkarni. She's the Chief Product Officer at Aryaka, who, if you've been a listener for some time, you know we've had on the show before. I'm really interested in hearing about Renuka's story because she's, I don't want to say super recent, but she's a more recent, or at least pandemic recent addition to the crew over at Aryaka. So really interested in exploring that story. Renuka, really happy to have you on the episode today.
Thank you, Scott, and super excited to be here.
Fantastic. You are you're in San Mateo at headquarters for Aryaka now, yes?
That's right. I'm actually in the office in San Mateo.
Fantastic. And what we didn't realize coming in here is that we're neighbors. Bridgepoint at least we're not. I'm in Philadelphia, but our headquarters is also in San Mateo, right around the corner from where you are, which is super interesting. But let's just jump right into it. Let's start with you. You've got an interesting career history and some really cool roles. But before we get to your career history, how about you just tell us about you personally?
So I like to describe myself as a very passionate problem solver. And
Okay.
one of the things that when I started my career, I started it in the security space. I happened to be in the network security back in the day when Cisco was trying to explore security. This was before they had any offerings in that space. And I worked in the office of CTO trying to figure out what are the latest and the greatest security problems. And that basically got me really hooked. And ever since, I have spent my 20 plus years in the security industry solving all kinds of cybersecurity problems. And what gets me going is identifying where the industry is going, where customers are going, what problems they're trying to solve for. And my loyalty has been always to solving these cybersecurity problems. And I was fortunate enough being in the Bay Area that I was able to, work on like really cutting edge 1.0 security, startups. My companies got acquired. I went through a variety of outcomes, from getting acquired to filing for a bankruptcy, being a first employee of a startup. And it has definitely been an exciting journey. And the thing that wakes me up in the morning and gets me to work is this opportunity to transform. And I've done this when I was at VMware. I was the first security hire at VMware back in the day, more than a decade ago. I did the same thing at Infoblox, where I transformed the organization from a networking to a security. I had the same opportunity at F5, where F5 was not recognized as a security company. I was, one of the early people. And by the time I left, they had upwards of $1 billion of business in security. So that's what is my, from a personal side of things. I have two daughters who are teenagers, and I'm really, as a mother, trying to get my daughters in STEM, getting them interested. But I just like to think of myself as a passionate problem solver, and cybersecurity is an area which I'm like addicted to and hooked onto.
I love that. And listen, I want to read some of that back so that you're not selling yourself short, but particularly with our listeners. We're talking Cisco, VMware, Infoblox, F5, and now Aryaka. I mean, you've hit it. And then, not only from the big lists of names, right, but also through, some really interesting times in the industry, right? 2000, 2008, 2000. So like we've been through a couple of those, and you've seen it all, which makes you arriving at Aryaka super interesting to me. So powerful lady we have on the pod today, and I'm really interested in hearing a little bit more about what you got going on here. I love passionate problem solver. We'll explore that a little bit as we go. I'm going to ask you one more sort of personalist question, and then we'll sort of use that as a jumping off point sort of into the career and talk a little bit more about Aryaka. Just talk about what you're reading right now. Is there a book on your end table? I always like to kind of poke and prod and see what people are into.
You know, honestly, I'm really not a books person. I do a lot of podcasts, vlogs. I used to have an app on my phone which would give me a gist of like the book, because like for me, sitting down and reading book is a little
Yeah.
bit boring. It kind of like puts me to sleep, to be honest. But having said that, there are a few books that I'm a big fan of.
Yeah.
Good to Great. That's one book where it talks about how companies have evolved from a business side. One book which I use as a Bible in my day-to-day operations is called Zone to Win. This is Jeffrey Moore's book. Jeffrey Moore, I work very closely with him at F5. He was a consultant to us. And the thing I absolutely loved about that is it's like an operating playbook, like how to run the business, how to make decisions.
Mhm.
And that's something which all of us deal with on a daily basis. And when you have to make some very tough calls, it's all about what is the decision criteria, how do you put things in context, how do you structure the thinking. And that's why I love that book, Zone to Win. And I read it multiple times. I consulted with him. I actually pointed some some areas which were like not really optimal suggestions, and in fact Jeff was really kind and he said, hey, this is great feedback, right? So I like the practicality of implementing certain playbooks that help leaders make tough decisions, and put framework around it, which allows us to have very robust decision making, right? So that's my favorite book by far.
That's amazing. And I know not many people can say that they've had the opportunity to be personally mentored by Jeffrey Moore either. Right. So I,
That's my career highlight, so to
I
speak.
mean,
I
wow,
Yep.
that's incredible. We could probably spend the rest of the episode on that, but we won't. I'll call you and we'll have a personal conversation about that. That sounds completely amazing. Um, so when I was digging back through your career highlights and sort of in pre-prep, and then obviously we chatted about it just before we began the recording. um, I was kind of reading the tea leaves a little bit, just kind of trying to take. I always find it interesting when people have made career moves, in particular between 21 and kind of the end of 22, because in a lot of ways, particularly as technology leaders, it was probably to accomplish something for a company post pandemic, or given the change in the way that we work and how we work and things of that nature. Um, I made that statement on the pre-call and you nodded. So let's spend some time unpacking that. You came in to be the chief product officer at Aryaka, really at the tail end of the pandemic. And I imagine it was to accomplish something. Uh, so tell me why Aryaka, why the move, and sort of, what was the passionate problem solving that you were looking to do there?
Sure, absolutely, Scott. So, as I mentioned, I have always followed the industry evolution for the last couple of decades. And we are very fortunate to live in the times that we are in, because the technology is completely changing things on a daily basis. And the thing I like about cybersecurity more so than the others is the life cycle of the technologies and the companies is relatively shorter. Like every 5 years, you see another disruptive technology that comes up, another simpler way, or maybe new kinds of attacks that are coming up that you need to solve for. So what I believe is the way industry has evolved is there was a period of time where everybody focused on infrastructure. So this is back in my Cisco days. People spent so much money on buying infrastructure, getting to the internet. It was the .com and so on and so forth, right? Then there was a second phase, which is applications era, so to speak. And applications era was all about public cloud. This is when I was at VMware. In fact, VMware at one point in time was building public cloud, and then they said maybe people are not ready yet, and they said let's do private cloud first. And that was a sort of like a trajectory changing decision. When I look back, and I'm like, that was actually a trajectory changing decision for VMware. This is when Amazon was a bookseller, so we are talking about
Yeah.
time frame when there was a huge opportunity for anybody to come and take that conversation forward, right? So there was an era of application focus and going to the cloud. And what people have figured now is like, okay, I have solved my compute problem by going to the cloud, but I still need to get my operating model of my business sorted out. And this is where we started seeing digital transformation that started about 10 years ago. People started talking about, I'm going to be online, I'm going to do digital transformation, I'm using the cloud for agility and so on. And then we were all hit by COVID. Okay. So now you have your business that is actually trying to grow and do new things, new investments, do digital transformation. But on the other hand, you're severely handicapped because of the macro conditions where, first of all, the capital is very difficult. So today the cost of capital is really, it's hard to get capital, it's hard to get investment. Any business that you're looking at, they're trying to really do cost savings. So the third era that where we are right now, that I feel has hit us post COVID, is what I call as convergence era. So convergence is, I want to drive efficiencies, I want to get to the economies of scale, I want to save money by putting things together. And that's where, after solving the compute problem, I now want to solve the networking and security problem. And oh, by the way, we also have a big resource crunch, because there is like 3.5 million job openings in the cybersecurity space. Even hiring people with technical skill set is so difficult. It's so
Mhm.
difficult to even figure out, like, how do I use the technology for the best benefit of my business? How do I focus on my business, top line and margins, and not waste time and resources on building the technology, right? So I feel it's a trifecta effect. A lot of things going on at the same time. You're trying to grow digital transformation, you're trying to save money, and there is a shortage of skill set. And that's what the opportunity that I saw Aryaka had, where we had solved the network layer problem.
Mhm.
And we had this global private network, which is optimized to move traffic from point A to point B anywhere in the network with the best network performance. And using the same infrastructure and using the same capabilities, now we can offer conversions to our customers. And guess what? This is what is a simple definition of the word SASE. So
Mhm.
SASE was a term that was coined by Neil McDonald in 2019, August 2019. And I remember sitting with my CEO and briefing him about, hey, this new thing is going to happen. And this is a big shift in the industry where people are now going to try to solve these very complicated problems of converging your decisions on networking, security. How do I be more secure and be more agile at the same time? And that's where I saw SASE was a huge opportunity. I looked at Aryaka. They were trying to solve this problem. They had already figured that security is a big deal. And with my background in cybersecurity, it just made perfect sense for me to transform the organization and take it to that next level, where we can truly offer a very robust SASE offering.
Got it. it's amazing. I mean, the timing's perfect. I think I love the idea of conversion, and it's also convergence, I guess, right? In a lot of ways, um, I think about networking in almost the exact same way as you just talked about it at a macro level, right? It was like networking was an infrastructure business, right? You bought a wire that went from one place to one
Yeah.
place, and it was about the medium. But then you bought layer one and layer two, but as the customer, you had to be layer three and layer four, right?
Yeah.
And kind of security comes along with that. And then of course the middle piece comes and it becomes about application. And we start selling networking, largely based around MPLS as an example, where I was
Yes.
buying not only the medium, right, the
Yes.
one and two, but I was buying, the layer three intelligence to create the network as part of it, and in a lot of ways, my end got dumber, right?
Yep.
Because I was already sort of networked. And now you're sort of in this conversion where a lot of things happen. SD-WAN was already well in flow before
Yeah.
the pandemic happened, where we basically said, all right, now we're going to take the intelligence and we're just going to push it down. We're just going to go, I don't even care about layers one. Just give me dumb internet access and
Exactly.
it's back to I'll make the network effectively, but I'll do it with intelligence,
Yes.
over that. And then the cheese got moved, right?
Mhm.
Then it went from, 21% of people being at home and it was an
Mhm.
SD-WAN problem, right?
Mhm.
To I'm not even sure I know what a WAN is anymore, right? In a
Exactly.
lot of ways, because
Yes.
there are more constituent endpoints that aren't even in an office in most businesses today. Um,
Yep.
than there are actual office buildings to bring together into the WAN. So I love that kind of natural progression. And I think you can say the same thing about networking. I think you can say the same thing about security. We brought it, then we gave it away. Now it's kind of back to the edge, and it's really an interesting way of looking at it. How'd I do it, at least in sort of paraphrasing your levels there, moving
You're
from
spot on.
infrastructure to
You're
conversion?
spot on, Scott. And I think the one side of the equation, so you covered the users moving away from wherever they are going to be working from, right? But there is a equal mirror effect on the application side, where applications are not in the data center anymore because they are now in public clouds, or they could be delivered as a SaaS. So
Yeah.
not only are you dealing with one side of the sources of, like, where the users are, you're also dealing with the other side, which is the applications are no more in your data center, right? So I
Yeah.
like the terminology of last mile, middle mile, and first mile. So when I was talking about the evolution from infrastructure to application to convergence, what happened in the application era is people jumped to the cloud, okay, just to find out that the cost of operating in the cloud was tremendously higher than what they had planned for.
Yeah.
And one of the cost of operating in cloud, I think compute is probably okay. Compute is like relatively, it's a sustainable. But when you are using the cloud for your primary business, the egress of from the cloud to the internet, that bandwidth cost was like humongous, right?
Yeah.
And I think this is where there is a very interesting opportunity for people like us to solve the network and compute and security together, right? So compute, let's just say public cloud has solved it, but the network and security is wide open from a cost savings perspective, from the architecture perspective, and the dynamics of users being anywhere, applications being anywhere. How do you even make sure that you have end-to-end connectivity?
Yeah. Well, so, in a lot of ways, if you think just at a macro level, again, it's like we were one to one, then one to many, and now it's many to many,
Yes.
at any point.
Yeah.
Are we beyond? Here's a fun question, right? I mean, you meet with customers all the time, I'm sure. And you're doing that and you're doing their discovery and you're trying to figure out their problems so that you see if there's something that Aryaka can do for them. But when you do that, you're putting together a proposal for something. Are
Mhm.
we yet at a point where the base unit of measure in those conversations is no longer number of locations, it's just number of people?
It's a combination, as you
Yeah.
mentioned. It's many to many, right? So it's like I have users who are coming from wherever. I need the last mile connectivity, private access, or the remote access figured out. And even with the private access, remote access, back in the day, people used VPNs and IPsec VPN. And everybody, I'm sure you had that experience. I was at the early VPN stage when VPNs were not even a thing. and everybody struggled with like that client and getting it ready, and the performance being low, and we all just like lived with it, because that was, when you're sick, you're working from home, right? That was like
Yeah.
not the default way. Now that the default way is that I'm going to be remote, people are very frustrated if there's a latency and the applications don't work. We have customers who told us, you know they actually put together office in the box, and they shipped this, things to they had an access point wireless router, they had a, laptop, and they shipped it to people's home, and sure enough, they got connected, but they were not able to perform their daily task because they couldn't even have a phone conversation, as an example, because the network bandwidth was not reliable or was not
Hmm.
available, right? So the point is that there is so much of there's a different expectation and user experience that has shifted dramatically in terms of how can remote users work from home, right?
Yeah.
Similarly, when you go to the cloud, the problem our customers had was, you have a cloud workload in, say, Amazon, and it is, say, in US West, but your remote workers are like all over the place. They are coming from Europe, they are coming from Asia, and their experience is so bad that by the time it loads, they actually, like, the users get frustrated, the employees get frustrated. So
Yeah.
it has a huge impact on productivity, it has a huge impact on, like, just getting things done. And that is like a real core problem that our customers always talk to us about,
Yeah. I
right?
read, um, it was a Gartner, I believe, document, but it effectively said that their belief was that the average business could support 20% of their workforce being home pre-pandemic, um, which is
Mm,
kind of interesting, right? When you think about it.
yeah.
I mean, I tell this story a lot. You'll laugh being, effectively a networking company at the end of the day, but we sold more bandwidth in March, April, and May of 2020 than we had for years and years and years before that. And it was literally just adding bandwidth to the headquarters to get people
Interesting.
over the VPN to the headquarters, to get them back out to the cloud, and just
Exactly.
burning all that two-way bandwidth, which was entirely and completely unnecessary at the end of the day. Definitely changing the strategy and the story. Help me out with something if you wouldn't mind, because we do have leaders who are listening to this podcast who are,
Mhm.
some are technical and some are business leaders, and they're if they're on the business leader side, not the technical side, they're just thinking about this whole idea that, oh, I'm here in hybrid work, and everybody's home and everybody's in the office, and there's no more,
Mhm.
to your point, expectation that it's a substandard experience at home. um,
Mhm.
and then we're doing all this while the security threat footprint is getting wider and wider, and my IT guy is telling me to worry about that. Can you give me, from your perspective, a layman's description of what's different about SASE? What does SASE do, you know, in your words,
Sure.
to a business owner?
Yeah, so I think the simplest way to think about SASE is, you want to offer security without compromising performance. Okay. You want to offer the same level of security without compromising the user experience and the performance. And that has been a traditional, like, for the 20 years that I was in, that has always been a challenge. Because when I built security products back in the day, we were asked to be in a monitoring mode, like sit on the side, be in out of band mode. And security cannot be effective or enforced if it doesn't exist in line. So this has been a dilemma forever between the networking and security. And today things have gotten really complicated because you cannot have these security products as a checkbox anymore. You've got to have them effective. You've got to enforce them. And what SASE does is it really allows you to have ubiquitous security with the same level of the same level of effectiveness across all the users and for all the applications, right? It's very important that you have security which is broad and deep at the same time, and that can be enforced. And the only way to enforce security is through the network, because we all know that's network is basically the plumbing that carries the packets and can take actions. So what SASE does is it actually combines these two concepts together, which is, now that I'm carrying your traffic, I know what is good, what is bad, what is okay, what is not okay, what are your access control policies. I can actually take those actions right when the traffic is going through it. So SASE is this promise of combining the simplicity of the networking with high performance, availability, all of those factors, and ensuring that you can apply the same levels of security and have a good security posture across the entire network, not just bits and pieces, not just in front of your sensitive data, not just in front of your certain applications, because the weakest link is actually, it's not your high performance high mission critical applications. It
Hmm.
actually could be anything, right? I mean, we talked about Target, right? It was the HVAC vendor. Like, I mean, think about it, like how abstract is that conversation,
Yeah.
right? So that is what SASE does and provides.
Got you. And I'll I'll read that back and I'll say it a slightly different way. You're certainly free to disagree with me. I think about it as I describe it. I'll say to business owners, I'm like, historically, you're remote workers. It was a concept of using the internet, securely tunneling back to the office, and then applying security to get people out to the internet. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And in a lot of ways, edge is the last of the acronym in SASE, right? Is it pushes that intelligence out. So you don't need to pull everybody back. You're applying the security edge everywhere where people are getting to the internet, as opposed to kind of dragging everybody back to headquarters logically and then pushing them out through kind of the big corporate pipe, if you will. Oversimplification, but probably works for a business leader.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's definitely one way to think about it. I am gonna go a little bit technical. I have one comment to make on that,
Go, please.
which is, when people say security, one thing that always, which is my pet peeve, is like, what do you mean by security? Okay.
Yeah.
When you say security, are you saying access control? Are you talking about threat protection? Are you talking about risk mitigation? What piece of security are you referring to? And one of the challenges that the security industry had, for decades, is we have point solutions for point problems. Okay.
Yeah.
So if you look at, like, I mean, one of the common things I hear from people is we have 65 different security vendors today, and we have like 10 plus clients on our desktop, on our laptops, desktops. We have like multiple of these networking appliances, which are service change one after the other. And after all of this, I still cannot say that, hey, I'm secure. Okay. So from a business leader's perspective, it's like a bottomless pit, and you continue to pour money in it. And guess what? At the end of it, it's not getting you what you really wanted. Right. So what SASE does is, and the way I like to describe things, from a SASE context, is you apply the right security measures based on what is needed. So if the user is going to the internet, you may want to do URL filtering, SWG technology, right? Security. If the users are going to the public cloud, you might want to do data protection to see if there's any compliance challenges with the data in the cloud. If the user is going to SaaS applications, you may want to do CASB, which is only needed if you're going to the SaaS applications. So being able to be judicious about which security to apply when is a
Mm-hmm.
very important aspect. Because if you try to do 100% technology, like all 100% security products to 100% of the traffic, you're going to be spending a whole bunch of money, a whole bunch of time, and yet you may not see the results because it makes the whole thing very brittle.
Mm-hmm.
So the key is to apply the right security enforcement, right technologies for the right traffic. And this is where the traffic steering with network layer and applying the right security policies with the security makes SASE unique. So SASE is that promise where right security for the right place at the right time.
Got it. No, that's a really, really good description. And I think a good stepping off point. I'll ask just this question first. I'm a big I'm a big fan of, and we obviously represent a ton of technology companies. Our strategists are out in the field meeting with customers, trying to solve whatever that one problem that they have that day it happens to be. And I like to ask our suppliers and partners to sort of interface with us around what their superpower is. And so if I said, what's Aryaka's superpower? I think you may have answered it already, in the context of the larger conversation. I'm sure you have, but I'll ask the question so you can just sort of frame it in one sentence. Aryaka's superpower is.
So I like to use the phrase, we got you covered. This is what we tell our customers: we got you covered. And the reason we talk about this in the customer context is we always meet customers where they are. One of the big sort of like misunderstandings that people have is SASE is like a binary function. Today you're not SASE, tomorrow you're SASE, and that's not how things work. SASE is a journey. And when you talk about SASE, you have to actually think about your infrastructure very carefully. You have to think about what do you have today for your firewalls. Do you have hardware firewalls which are getting end of life? Do you have subscriptions for things like SWG, which is actually coming to an end? And when you migrate to SASE, you have to be very, very prudent, and you have to be very thoughtful about how you migrate to SASE, because it's not a step function. And
Hmm.
that is Aryaka's superpower, which is we meet customers where they are. So when we go into a customer, they are typically replacing our MPLS circuit. We help them with that. We help them with monitoring their last mile, making sure the connectivity end to end is available between all the last mile, middle mile, and first mile. We have direct connections to the cloud assets and so on. But after that, we talk about, so what are you doing today on your firewalls, as an example? And then we try to integrate those capabilities. If you have an existing firewall from different vendors like Checkpoint, Palo Alto, we actually manage it for them. Again,
Got
we
it.
talk about resource constraints, right? So we help them manage, and then we help them migrate gradually to whatever they want, whatever policies they like. We help them do URL filtering. We have things like cloud connectors. So Aryaka basically takes the traffic and sends it over to whoever your cloud security provider might be. It could be Prisma from Palo Alto. It could be a Zscaler. It could be Netscope. We really are agnostic to what the customer choices are. Our goal is to make sure that we have the customer covered. We help them where they are. We help them take through this journey, and it's like I said, it's a journey for the whole industry, and
Yeah.
and helping customers through that, hand holding them, is what our superpower is.
Fantastic. That's a great answer. This may be an uncomfortable question, but I'm going to go there. Given your career and you've been at a lot of interesting places, what's your superpower?
I think my superpower is, to make things work. I get things done, and there are many dynamics to it. One is technology conversations. We talked
Yeah.
about them, and I'm super fascinated by the potential. And I know AI has to be mentioned in all conversations. So AI is one of the things which we know can change a whole bunch of things. My superpower is to bring the strength of these technologies, such as AI, to what we do today. And because Aryaka has access to all the network traffic of all our customers, by applying very simple statistical analysis, simple modeling, simple ML, and then in the future AI, I'm not even going to the AI yet. I feel we can have tremendous amount of observability capabilities. So
Yeah.
my goal at Aryaka is to move Aryaka from being a networking company to a security company to be an observability company, where we can actually predict how your traffic is going to change, what kinds of attacks you might be vulnerable to, and how do we proactively help businesses attain business goals of cost savings, as well as trying to be more secure at the same time. You don't need to compromise security for cost, and the other way around, right? So my superpower is just to make things work, and get things with the with the best possible outcomes, to use the technology.
I love it. That's a great answer. Um, I'm going to stay on that though, then, because I think you proffered some predictions of the future there for the company, but I'm going to ask you to maybe offer a shameless prediction to all of us, given your extensive background in technology. And I don't care what it's about. It could be geopolitical, sports, entertainment, or in our industry. But put your prognosticator hat on for us, if you would. Give us something that interesting that's going to occur in the next 18 months or so.
So I think Gen Z is gonna take over the the workspace. I feel like Gen Z is a huge disruption in the way we do business, the way we do things. And Gen Z comes with their own superpowers. So technology understanding, and using technology as tools, is Gen Z's superpower.
Mm-hmm.
And especially the combination of Gen Z with AI is a very lethal combination. And what I think is happening is people are trying to mold Gen Z into our ways of doing things. And I think we should not do that. We should resist that temptation of molding Gen Z into the other, like, traditional way of running business. We should instead try to nurture Gen Z to actually take us forward multiple folds, because this is an extremely potent, very, very capable workforce. But they have their own, like, how do you make them work to your advantage is
Yeah.
actually a big challenge culturally, right? So I feel like Gen Z is coming. They are going to take over the workplace, and over the next 18 months, if we are able to adapt to the ways of working, and if we are able to really harvest the strengths that they bring, the companies will be like super successful. But if we are into the space where we are trying to force fit them into our world, it's going to be difficult. So I think just getting ready for that disruption that's happening in the workforce with
Yeah.
both the people and the technology together, I think we should just brace ourselves and get ready for that.
It's a really, really interesting thought. I want to ask a follow-on question. Would we be in a position to embrace Gen Z had we not had the pandemic disrupt the way that the last previous generations worked so
That's a
significantly?
great idea. That's a super interesting thought, Scott. And of course, the answer is no. I can tell you from my own personal experience when I was part of the, when I worked in a larger company,
Yeah.
working for the CEO, right? We were a in-person culture. I would actually every Monday morning I used to like wake up at like 5:30, take a flight at 6:30, be in the office at 8:30, and it was like a mandatory for everybody to be in person.
Yeah.
And guess what? Pandemic happened, people had to figure out ways to make it work. And Gen Z is actually very influenced by pandemic more so than us. And their expectations of what a work is, it's very interesting. Even in my own office, like just last week I was talking to somebody and I said, hey, we want like people to be in the office on certain days so we can collaborate and work. And they were like, yeah, but I already talked to the recruiter that I was not going to be here every day. And so even like there's such a huge expectation
Yeah.
difference. You are absolutely right. We have been conditioned a lot better today compared to what we were like 3 years ago before
Oh,
pandemic.
yeah.
I mean, that conversation was very strange, like at so many levels, because
Yeah.
they were like, "Are you serious? Like, you want to be at work?" I mean, like, why? Why would you want to be at work? And I'm like, okay, sorry."
Well, I
But yeah,
mean,
but
at least we're conscious of the problem, right?
yes,
Our own problem
yes,
enough. And I think the pandemic probably caused that because we got so disrupted. But I think,
hmm,
yes, we've become more accepting of alternative work styles. But I think also it just brought so much of that competition to light that at least, first step in recovery is admitting you have a problem, right? Like, I
absolutely,
definitely, I'm hopeful that today's business leaders at least understand that they have the problem enough to know that
yes,
there's work to be put in to address it.
yes.
So I'll stick by that answer in the short term. That was a really interesting little tidbit there. I will definitely pull something out of there for my show introduction. That was great. So I'll ask you one more before I let you go, um, because you are going to see Oppenheimer with your team today. I think
Yes,
is what you were telling me earlier.
yes.
That's amazing. So I'll let you get out of the office and get there. Just one more. I ask all of our guests um, if the next transformative event like the pandemic happens and technology is degraded significantly and one application remains working on your mobile device and you had to choose which one it was, which one would it be?
Messaging,
Okay.
just being able to message people and just talk to, like, connect with people.
Yeah.
I think that is like a super important. And I didn't say phone call, honestly, because like I don't know, somehow people are going away from the phone call, and just the ability to do one to many with like messages and broadcasting. I think it's an amazing app. So that is one app I would like on my mobile
All
when
right.
it stops working.
It'll be super helpful in the zombie apocalypse to be able to coordinate our activities, I think, via text message. So
Yes.
all good there. I get it. And a great choice, of course. Renuka, this has been a really, really fun conversation. I hope it was for you as well.
Yeah, it was great and really good insights from you, Scott. I mean, it was amazing to hear your thoughts on some of the stuff.
Well,
Really, really.
good. I really, really appreciate that. Thank you. And, Aryaka is a great partner for Bridgepoint. We do a lot of work together. And, if we're looking forward to continuing that growth, if our listeners want to find out a little bit more about Aryaka, how would you recommend they do it?
I think the best way to do that is find us on LinkedIn. We are spelled as Aryaka. You can go to our website, which is aryaka.com. And we are always available. The best way to connect, I would say, is on LinkedIn.
Fantastic. Well, I appreciate the time. It was really insightful. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks so much for being on the bridge.
Thank you so much, Scott.
Listen, If you made it this far, there must have been some good content, or you're just a fan or a relative of mine. In either case, we appreciate you spending your most valuable asset with us, your time. We don't take that lightly. We'd also like to say one more time that we're appreciative of Bridgepoint Technologies and their belief and sponsorship of this show. We hope that if you or someone you know is thinking about your company's digital transformation, or simply the next IT project that you may not have the resources, budget, or time to get to, I'm sure that Bridgepoint, one of the country's fastest growing technology advisory and procurement firms, can help. Check out bridgepointtechnologies.com. Don't forget the E on Bridgepoint, or simply reach out to me at Skinka, SKINKA, at bpt3.net. Also take a minute, please, if you would, to give us a 5-star review on your favorite platform. It helps give us the visibility to reach other people like you. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Bridge. I'm Scott Kinka, and until next time, there's a lot of noise out there in business and in life. Do what you can to be the signal. Thanks.